Let me ask you something before we go any single step further. Last night, before you closed your eyes, what did you eat? Because what I'm about to tell you may completely reshape the way you think about those final hours of your day. The food you put into your body in the evening is either quietly breaking down your brain while you sleep, or it is powerfully rebuilding it, repairing memory circuits, reducing inflammation deep inside brain tissue, and growing entirely new neural connections while you rest. This is not about supplements. This is not a wellness trend somebody invented last year. This is real food, food you can find in your local grocery store today. Food that researchers at some of the most respected scientific institutions on the planet have now confirmed can literally repair the brain overnight. And here is the part that stopped me cold when I first encountered it in the research. Most people over 60 are unknowingly starving their brains at the exact moment when the brain needs nutrition the most. Not during the day, not at breakfast, at night, while they sleep. Tonight, that ends. My name is Dr. Benita Fieldhouse. I have dedicated more than 3 decades of my career to studying how what we eat interacts with the human body at a cellular level, the deepest level, the level where memory is either preserved or lost. What I am sharing with you today comes directly from cutting-edge neuroscience, and I say this with confidence. Your doctor has almost certainly never had the time to cover any of this in a standard appointment. But before I take you through the list, I need to share a study with you that genuinely changed how I counsel my patients. Researchers at the University of Toronto published findings showing that targeted nutritional intake in the evening hours, specifically within 90 minutes of going to sleep, improved memory consolidation scores by up to 43% in adults over the age of 65. 43%, compared to those who ate nothing before bed or who ate the wrong things. I want you to sit with that number for a moment. 43% is not a marginal improvement. That is the difference between remembering where you left your glasses and spending 20 minutes retracing every step you took that morning. That is the difference between recalling a grandchild's birthday and feeling that hollow, frightening blankness that so many of my patients describe as one of the most distressing experiences of growing older. And I want to tell you right now, before we go any further into the list, that the number one food on today's countdown is something that the majority of people over 70 have been specifically told to avoid. I will reveal it at the very end, and I believe it will genuinely surprise you. So please stay with me all the way through, because that final one is the food I recommend most urgently and most consistently to the patients sitting across from me. But first, I want to hear from you right now in the comments below. Tell me your age and whether you have noticed any changes in your memory or mental sharpness over the past few years. I read every comment on this channel personally, and your response helps me make sure I am giving you exactly the information that is most relevant to your life. We have an extraordinary community here of people who are choosing to take their brain health seriously. I want to know you are part of it. Now, let us get into the countdown. We are working from number 5 down to number 1, moving from highly beneficial all the way up to the single most powerful brain-repairing food you can consume before sleep. Let us start at number 5, Tart Cherry Juice. I know that might not sound dramatic, but what this particular juice does to the aging brain during sleep is something scientists are only beginning to fully understand. And the picture that is emerging from the research is remarkable. Most people think of cherries as a summer treat, something seasonal and sweet. But tart cherries, specifically the Montmorency variety, contain one of the highest natural concentrations of melatonin found in any food source on Earth. And they combine that melatonin with a class of anti-inflammatory compounds called anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are natural plant pigments that give tart cherries their deep red color, and they have a very specific, very targeted effect on aging brain tissue. Here is the science, and I will keep it grounded and clear because it matters enormously. As we age, our brains develop something called neuroinflammation. That simply means a slow, chronic, low-level inflammation building up inside the brain itself. Picture a major road where the traffic has started backing up. Signals are still moving, but everything is slower. Connections are being disrupted. Messages between brain cells take longer to arrive. Memories become harder to form and harder to retrieve. After the age of 70, neuroinflammation increases significantly in most people. Researchers at the Cleveland Clinic now consider it to be one of the primary drivers of age-related memory decline, not a side effect of aging, a primary driver. Tart Cherry Juice targets this problem from two directions at once. The anthocyanins in the juice are capable of crossing what is called the blood-brain barrier. Think of the blood-brain barrier as a highly selective security checkpoint. Most substances cannot get through. Anthocyanins can. Once inside the brain, they suppress specific inflammatory proteins called cytokines, which are the molecules directly responsible for damaging the neurons involved in memory storage. At the same time, the natural melatonin in tart cherry juice helps regulate your sleep architecture. It specifically increases the amount of deep, slow-wave sleep you get each night. And deep, slow-wave sleep is the stage during which your brain performs its most intensive memory consolidation work. This is not light sleep. This is the deep, restorative phase where the brain is actively doing its most important repair and filing work. A study published in the European Journal of Nutrition found that adults over 65 who drank 8 ounces of tart cherry juice every night for 12 weeks showed a 24% improvement in sleep efficiency, along with significantly better scores on episodic memory tests. Episodic memory is your ability to recall specific personal events and experiences. The things that happened to you, the conversations you had, the moments that matter. And here is why this matters even more after 65 specifically. Your body's natural melatonin production drops by as much as 50% compared to your younger years. You are working with half the sleep-regulating chemistry you once had, which means your brain is spending significantly less time in the deep restorative stages where memory repair actually happens. Tart cherry juice helps compensate for that deficit in a way that is gentle, natural, and carries virtually no side effects. Here is how to use it practically. Drink 8 ounces of pure, unsweetened tart cherry juice around 60 to 90 minutes before bed. Check the label carefully and make sure it specifically says Montmorency tart cherry, not sweet cherry, because the chemical composition is entirely different. If the sharpness is too strong for your palate, you can dilute it with a small amount of water. But do not add sugar. Sugar directly counteracts the anti-inflammatory benefits. And here is something that will make every sip work harder for you. Pair your tart cherry juice with a small amount of healthy fat. A few walnut halves or a teaspoon of olive oil on a plain cracker will do it. The anthocyanins in tart cherry juice are fat-soluble compounds, meaning they absorb far more efficiently into your bloodstream when there is a small amount of fat present in a same meal. I will come back to walnuts shortly, because the combination of these two things is genuinely one of the most powerful evening brain protocols I know. Now let's move to number 4, and this one might already be sitting in your refrigerator right now. Most seniors have it, but almost nobody is eating it at the right time of day to unlock its full benefit for the brain. I am talking about Greek yogurt. The reason Greek yogurt earns its place on this list has very little to do with calcium or general protein content, though both of those matter in their own right for the aging body. Greek yogurt is here because of its exceptionally high concentration of an amino acid called tryptophan. An amino acid is simply one of the building blocks that protein is made from. And tryptophan is the specific building block that your brain uses to manufacture serotonin. Serotonin is a brain chemical closely linked to mood, calm, and well-being. And serotonin, in turn, converts into melatonin, the hormone that governs your entire sleep cycle. Think of it this way. Tryptophan is the raw ingredient. Your brain receives it, processes it into serotonin, and then transforms that serotonin into the melatonin that controls when and how deeply you sleep. When you eat Greek yogurt before bed, you are essentially restocking your brain's production line with everything it needs to run its overnight maintenance operation at full power. But here's the part that is especially relevant for anyone over 60. There is a well-documented phenomenon in aging biology called anabolic resistance. That is the medical term for your body's reduced ability to effectively use protein as you get older. After the age of 70, your muscles and your brain both become less efficient at extracting the building blocks they need from protein consumed throughout the day. However, Research from Maastricht University in the Netherlands found that slow-digesting proteins consumed in the evening hours are processed differently. Greek yogurt is rich in a specific type of protein called casein. Casein digests slowly over 6 to 8 hours. Because of that, it sustains amino acid availability throughout the entire night while you sleep. It gives your aging metabolism a much longer window to absorb and use what it needs. For the brain specifically, that sustained overnight amino acid supply means a continuous stream of the raw materials needed to repair synaptic connections. A synapse is the junction point between two brain cells where information is passed from one to the other. Every memory you carry exists as a living pattern of synaptic connections, and those connections require protein-derived compounds to maintain their physical structure. Without them, the pattern degrades, the memory fades. 1 cup of full-fat Greek yogurt contains approximately 17 to 20 grams of protein with a casein-dominant profile. A study from Florida State University found that older adults who consumed 40 grams of casein protein before bed showed significantly greater overnight cognitive recovery markers compared to those who ate nothing. The researchers specifically noted improvements in what they termed cognitive flexibility. That is your brain's ability to shift smoothly between thoughts and tasks. And cognitive flexibility is one of the very first mental capacities to decline in the normal aging process. Take 1 cup of full-fat Greek yogurt, not the fat-free variety. You need that fat for optimal nutrient absorption. Eat it about 45 minutes before bed. You can stir in a small amount of raw honey, which I will explain fully in just a moment, or add a few blueberries for an extra anthocyanin boost. Avoid adding granola, sweetened toppings, or anything high in sugar or refined carbohydrate. These spike insulin at bedtime and actively interfere with the very brain repair processes we are trying to support. If what you are hearing right now is genuinely opening your eyes, I want to ask you to do one simple thing. Hit the like button and subscribe if you have not already done so. I publish new videos every week designed specifically for people who are serious about protecting their brain health and preserving their independence as they age. Every subscription tells me you want more of this kind of content, and it helps me reach the many thousands of seniors who are quietly struggling and have never been shown this information before. Your support matters more than you know. Now, the top 3. This is where the science becomes truly extraordinary. At number 3, we have walnuts. Not a mixed handful of assorted nuts, not almonds or cashews, specifically walnuts. And the reason for that distinction comes down to a combination of compounds found in very few foods on Earth. Compounds with a direct, measurable, documented effect on the aging human brain. Let me tell you about one of my patients, a woman I will call Eleanor, 74 years old, a retired secondary school teacher who had spent her entire career sharp, articulate, completely in command of language and memory. By the time she came to see me, she was frightened. She was misplacing things around her home. She was losing the thread of conversations halfway through. She was forgetting the names of people she had known for 20 years or more. Her regular physician had told her this was simply normal aging, that there was nothing meaningful to be done. Eleanor began including a small handful of walnuts in her evening routine as part of a broader nutritional protocol. After 8 weeks, she sat across from me and said, and I remember this clearly, "It feels like someone came in and switched the lights back on." I am always careful about individual cases because every person is different. But Eleanor's experience reflects exactly what the research consistently demonstrates. And the science on walnuts and brain health is among the most robust in all of nutritional neuroscience. Walnuts are the only nut that contains a meaningful amount of a specific omega-3 fatty acid called alpha-linolenic acid, combined with a high concentration of polyphenols and a unique antioxidant called ellagic acid. But the most significant contribution walnuts make to brain health comes through their role as a precursor to DHA. DHA stands for docosahexaenoic acid. It is the fatty acid that makes up approximately 60% of your brain's structural fat. Every neuron in your brain is encased in a membrane built largely from DHA. Think of DHA as the insulation around electrical wiring. Without sufficient DHA, the signals traveling between brain cells become slow, distorted, and unreliable. After the age of 65, your brain's ability to synthesize and maintain its own DHA levels drops dramatically. Most people are severely deficient. Research published in the Journal of Nutrition, Health, and Aging found that older adults who consumed walnuts regularly demonstrated significantly better memory scores, faster cognitive processing speeds, and greater mental flexibility compared to those who did not. A separate study from the University of California, Los Angeles, involving over 600 adults with an average age of 68, found that higher walnut consumption was associated with a 52% lower risk of poor cognitive function on standardized testing. 52%. That number should be far more widely known than it is. The reason timing matters specifically for walnuts connects to something researchers have only recently discovered. Your brain has its own overnight cleaning system. Scientists now call it the glymphatic system. During deep sleep, this network of channels activates and flushes out metabolic waste that has accumulated throughout the day, including the amyloid plaques, which are the abnormal protein deposits that are closely associated with Alzheimer's disease. This flushing process requires healthy, flexible brain cell membranes to function properly, and those membranes are constructed from the fatty acids that walnuts help supply. Eating walnuts before bed ensures that the necessary building materials are circulating in your bloodstream at precisely the moment when your brain's cleaning system needs them most. Eat between 1 and 1.5 ounces of raw or dry roasted walnuts. That is approximately 14 walnut halves, about 60 minutes before sleep. Do not choose walnuts that have been roasted in oil or heavily salted. The added sodium and the oxidized fats in oil-roasted versions reduce the benefits significantly. And pair them with the Tart Cherry Juice we discussed at number 5. The combination of anthocyanins from the cherry juice and the polyphenols from the walnuts creates what researchers describe as a compounded anti-inflammatory effect inside the brain, stronger than either one produces alone. These two things together form what I think of as the brain's evening maintenance crew, and together they cost less than £2 or $2 a night. Now we move to number 2, and this one has a history stretching back thousands of years. Ancient physicians across multiple cultures prescribed it for mental clarity and cognitive strength. And modern neuroscience is now validating what those healers observe in ways they could never have scientifically explained. We are talking about raw honey. And I need to be very precise about the type and the dose, because the jar of honey sitting in most people's kitchen cupboards is a fundamentally different product from what I am recommending. Raw, unprocessed honey, specifically Manuka honey, or a locally sourced raw wildflower honey, contains a remarkable compound called pinosembrin. Pinosembrin is a flavonoid, which is a type of natural plant compound, and it is found in very few other dietary sources. Research at the University of Waikato in New Zealand demonstrated that pinosembrin promotes the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the region of your brain most directly responsible for forming and storing new memories. It is your brain's memory center, and the ability to grow new brain cells in that region, a process called neurogenesis, was once believed to stop entirely in early adulthood. We now know that neurogenesis continues throughout your entire life in the hippocampus, and that it can be both accelerated and inhibited by what you eat. Raw honey accelerates it. Processed sugar does the opposite. Here is why this matters so urgently for anyone over 65. After the age of 75, the hippocampus shrinks at a rate of approximately 1 to 2% per year in the absence of active protective measures. That shrinkage is directly correlated with declining episodic memory, the memories of conversations, of experiences shared with people you love, of appointments and occasions, and the names of the people who matter most to you. But researchers at the National Brain Research Center in India found that daily consumption of raw honey was associated with significantly increased levels of BDNF. BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of BDNF as fertilizer for the brain. It promotes the growth, maintenance, and repair of neurons, and it is considered by many researchers to be the single most important protein in the long-term prevention of age-related cognitive decline. Adults over 60 typically have BDNF levels that are 30 to 40% lower than younger adults. Raw honey helps restore them. There is also the matter of what raw honey does to cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone. When cortisol levels are elevated at night, which is extremely common in older adults. It is one of the most destructive forces acting on the aging brain. Prolonged high cortisol literally damages and kills hippocampal neurons, and it suppresses the deep sleep stages where memory consolidation takes place. Raw honey triggers a modest, controlled insulin response that gently lowers cortisol in the bloodstream before sleep. It calms the chemical environment inside the brain, creating a quieter, more stable neurochemical landscape in which memory repair can take place without disruption. Research from the University of Malaya showed that subjects who consumed raw honey before bed demonstrated significantly lower midnight cortisol levels and significantly higher scores on memory tests taken the following morning, compared to control groups who had not consumed honey. 1 to 2 teaspoons of raw honey, taken about 30 minutes before bed, is the optimal dose. More than 2 teaspoons begins to spike insulin too sharply and can actually counteract the very benefits you are trying to create. The honey must be raw and unheated. The commercial pasteurization and processing that most supermarket honey undergoes destroys the pinosembrin and the enzymatic compounds responsible for neurogenesis. Look for honey labeled raw and unfiltered, from a local beekeeper if possible, or from a trusted natural food supplier. Stir it into a warm herbal tea, but not water or tea that is above 40 degrees Celsius. Heat above that threshold destroys the active compounds, and pair it with your Greek yogurt for the most complete bedtime brain protocol. The casein protein in the yogurt slows the release of honey's natural sugars and extends that gentle cortisol-lowering effect across more of the night. I want to share another patient story here, because numbers and percentages matter, but people matter more. I had a patient, a man I will call Gerald, 71 years old, a retired civil engineer from a large city in the South. Gerald had always taken tremendous pride in his precise, analytical mind. He had memorized technical specifications. He had managed complex projects. He had always been the person in the room who remembered every detail. When he began forgetting the names of his neighbors and finding himself standing in the middle of a sentence with no recollection of what he had intended to say next, he told me it was the most disorienting experience of his adult life. It shook something deep in his sense of who he was. Gerald committed to what I call the evening brain protocol, a combination of several foods from this list with raw honey as a central component. 10 weeks later, he came back to my office with a quiet brightness in his face that had not been there before. He told me he had returned to doing crossword puzzles, something he had quietly stopped months earlier because they had become too frustrating, too humiliating. He told me his wife had said he seemed like himself again. That is what this is really about. Not test scores, not percentages. Life reclaimed. And now we arrive at number 1, the most powerful brain-repairing food you can eat before bed. The one I told you from the beginning that most people over 70 have been cautioned against. The one that I regard as the single most important dietary tool for cognitive longevity that I have encountered across my entire career. That food is fatty fish, specifically wild-caught salmon, sardines, or mackerel, eaten as a light evening meal or a generous snack approximately 2 hours before sleep. I know what some of you are thinking. You have been advised to watch your cholesterol. You have heard that eating late in the evening causes weight gain. You have been given a dozen reasons over the years to be cautious about fish and about eating at night. I am going to ask you to hold those concerns for just a few minutes while I show you what the research actually says. Because the gap between the dietary advice many seniors have received and what the science now demonstrates has never been wider than it is on this specific question. Wild-caught fatty fish is the most concentrated dietary source of preformed DHA and EPA. These are 2 omega-3 fatty acids that are not simply beneficial for brain health. They are structurally essential to it. They are literal building materials of brain tissue. Your brain is approximately 60% fat by dry weight, and the single most important fat within that 60% is DHA. Every neuron in your brain is encased in a membrane made largely of DHA. Every synaptic connection, every junction where a memory is physically stored, requires DHA for its structural integrity. Every thought you think, every memory you retrieve, every word you search for and either find or lose, all of it depends on the health of membranes that DHA maintains. Here is the critical aging-specific issue that almost nobody talks about clearly. After the age of 60, your liver's ability to convert plant-based omega-3, the kind found in walnuts and flaxseed, into the DHA that your brain actually uses drops by roughly 60 to 70%. That is an enormous reduction. It means that for most people over 60, plant-based omega-3 sources are delivering only a fraction of the brain benefit they would have provided in your 40s. The only reliable way to ensure your brain is receiving adequate DHA is through the direct consumption of preformed omega-3. And the richest dietary source of that is fatty fish. Research from Rush University Medical Center in Chicago, conducted as part of the landmark MIND diet study involving over 900 older adults, found that those who ate fish at least once per week had brains that were the functional equivalent of 11 years younger compared to those who rarely or never ate fish. 11 years younger, not marginally better, a full decade of cognitive aging essentially reversed through a single dietary habit. The reason evening timing amplifies this benefit comes back once again to the glymphatic system, your brain's overnight waste clearance mechanism. As I discussed with walnuts, the glymphatic system activates during deep sleep and clears the metabolic waste products that accumulate throughout the day, including the amyloid beta proteins that are closely linked to cognitive decline. This clearance process works dramatically better when brain cell membranes are rich in DHA, because flexible, well-maintained membranes allow the glymphatic fluid to move more freely through brain tissue. Researchers at the University of Rochester found that glymphatic clearance is up to 60% more efficient during sleep in individuals with adequate DHA levels compared to those who are DHA deficient. 60%. Eating fatty fish in the evening ensures peak DHA availability in your bloodstream precisely during the hours when your brain's cleaning system is working at its hardest. And there are additional compounds in fatty fish that make it uniquely powerful in this role. Wild salmon is exceptionally rich in astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is a natural carotenoid, a type of pigment antioxidant that is capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier and is regarded by researchers as one of the most potent neuroprotective compounds in nutritional science. It is 20 times more powerful as an antioxidant than vitamin C, and it specifically targets the mitochondria inside neurons. Mitochondria are the energy-generating structures inside every brain cell. Think of them as tiny power stations. After 65, neuronal mitochondria begin to malfunction at an accelerating rate. They produce less energy. They generate more damaging free radicals simultaneously, like aging power stations producing less electricity while creating more pollution. Astaxanthin helps restore their function, increasing energy output, reducing oxidative damage, in the very cells responsible for memory and cognition. Fatty fish is also exceptionally rich in vitamin D3, vitamin B12, and selenium, 3 nutrients in which the majority of adults over 65 are clinically deficient. And all 3 play direct and well-documented roles in neurological function and cognitive preservation. B12 deficiency alone is estimated to affect between 15 and 40% of adults over 60. And it is directly linked to brain atrophy, which means measurable physical shrinkage of brain tissue, along with memory loss and mood disturbance. A single 4-ounce serving of wild salmon provides approximately 80% of the daily B12 requirement, in a form that is among the most bioavailable of any dietary source, meaning your body can actually absorb and use it effectively. Researchers at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden followed over 1,000 adults aged 60 to 90 for 7 years. Those who had the highest blood levels of omega-3 fatty acids at the start of the study showed 73% less hippocampal shrinkage over the 7-year period, compared to those with the lowest levels. 73% less shrinkage in the memory center of the brain. In the same structure that Eleanor, that Gerald, that thousands of my patients have felt quietly diminishing and have been told nothing can be done to protect, there is something you can do. You are hearing it right now. On the practical side, wild-caught Alaskan salmon, Atlantic sardines packed in water or olive oil, and Atlantic mackerel are your best choices. Fresh fish is ideal, but high-quality canned sardines and canned salmon are equally effective from a nutritional standpoint and significantly more affordable and convenient. A 4 to 5 ounce serving eaten about 2 hours before bed gives your digestive system adequate time to process it and begin releasing those fatty acids into your bloodstream in alignment with the beginning of your sleep cycle. Prepare it simply: baked, steamed, or eaten directly from the can if you are choosing sardines. Avoid heavy sauces, breadcrumb coatings, or frying. All of these introduce inflammatory compounds that reduce the net benefit you are working to create. And the synergy pairing for fatty fish is raw honey taken about 30 minutes after your fish meal. The honey's effect on cortisol reduction creates a calmer, quieter neurochemical environment in which the omega-3 fatty acids can carry out their most effective overnight repair work. And if you combine fatty fish with a small handful of walnuts and 1 to 2 teaspoons of raw honey as your complete evening brain protocol, you are providing your brain with DHA for structural repair, BDNF stimulation for neuron growth, glymphatic support for waste clearance, powerful anti-inflammatory protection, and cortisol management, all in one coordinated, beautifully simple evening ritual that costs less than a cup of coffee each night. Before I close, I want to take just a moment to address something that I feel very strongly about. Something I say to my patients often, and mean with complete conviction: the idea that cognitive decline is simply the inevitable price of growing older, that the brain is on a one-way descent after 65, and there is nothing meaningful any of us can do about it. That is one of the most damaging beliefs in modern medicine, not because it is entirely without foundation, but because when people accept it as fixed truth, it becomes a self-fulfilling outcome. They stop making choices that could genuinely protect them. They stop fighting back. The men and women I have watched maintain their sharpness, their clarity, their independence, their ability to live fully and richly, and on their own terms well into their 80s and beyond, are not simply the lucky ones. They are not merely blessed with favorable genetics. They are people who decided to make different choices, quietly, consistently, starting with what they put on their plate in the evening. The scientific references supporting everything I have shared with you today are listed in the description section below this video. I encourage you to read them. Share them with your doctor. Have an honest conversation about how these foods fit into your specific health picture, and alongside any medications you are currently taking. Now here's what I want you to do right now. Leave a comment below this video. Tell me your age. Tell me which of these 5 foods you are going to try first. Tell me whether you have already noticed changes in your memory and how long that has been happening. Your words create community here, and your experience may be exactly what another person over 60 needs to read to take their first step toward protecting their own brain. If this video helped you today, please share it. Send it to a friend. Send it to a sibling. Send it to an adult child who you would like to have this conversation with. Getting it to the people who need it most is something we do together. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, please do that now by clicking the button below. Every week I bring you evidence-based, clearly explained health guidance built specifically for people over 50 and 60. No unnecessary complexity, no products to sell, just the science, translated into choices you can actually make. I am Dr. Benita Fieldhouse, and I believe, with everything 3 decades of research and clinical experience have taught me, that your brain is not done. It is not beyond help. It is waiting for the right signals, the right nourishment, the right moment for you to decide that your mind is worth fighting for. Start tonight. Start simply. One food, one evening, one decision that could begin shifting everything. I will see you in the next video. Take very good care of yourself.